So what do you expect in the next couple of days? I mean, Poland, all the other countries, not going to be quite that simple and that positive, but it was a great place to start.
It was a wonderful place to start. It was a great speech. And he left America first at home for a little bit, and he came and he talked about Western civilization, and he pointed out how we're under attack on so many fronts, including, and he said it, radical Islam, which he did not say in his speech in Saudi Arabia. So I think that was significant as well. I'm looking forward to this. I think it's going to be great. The media is going to hate everything he does, of course, because that is fake news. And he's going to sit down with Putin. And I think Putin has to realize he's not dealing with Obama, who said, hey, go take Crimea. Hey, you know, you want to go to Syria? Go ahead. And by the way, I'll have more leeway after the next election. He's going to tell Putin, play ball with us. You got to do this, and we have to work together. And your economy is in bad shape, baby, so you need us.
What I hated about he reaffirmed his commitment to helping Europe, of course. I hated that Europe was even sort of portrayed as the victim at all in the situation, because President Trump was never asking them to do anything absurd. He was just asking them to do what they agreed to do. It was supposed to be an alliance where they all are mutually working towards it.
Right, and I think that's why it's appropriate that he's in Poland. Chris and I had the opportunity to go to Poland for a book tour, and it was amazing. The people there, we got to sit on the river, and they talked about the stories of being invaded. They remember what war is like. They remember they just built their city to look like Warsaw before it was war-torn. So it is fresh to them, and they know what it's like to have an ally and have somebody who has your back, and what it's like when somebody promises to be there and doesn't show up. So I think being in Poland is important. That's why he's getting the support that he's getting, I think. And really, Chris fought with the GROM a lot in Iraq. The GROM is the special forces for the Polish. They showed up. I think it's just humankind, right? If I say I'm your friend, but when somebody comes to attack you, I don't show up, I'm not your friend. And so I think Poland has shown that they're the type of friend that when push comes to shove, they'll show up and fight with us. So we need to turn around and fight with them.
I think that's fair. And I think, you know, when there's so many outstanding questions from some across the globe as to what President Trump's international leadership will look like. Will he be there for his friends in the way that the world and our allies expect? And I think this is, again, the shared values conversation becomes very important and a great place for that to resonate and for him to put that plainly and blatantly for the world to see.
So Ty said something very important. They showed up. Poland showed up. They do. They showed up to fight when they say they're going to be an alliance with us, in alliance with us, and they did. Poland's one of the 5 nations
it actually pays their part.
Standing up to their commitment of 2% of their GDP to be spent on their own military. The U.S. is 3.5%. Poland's one of the other 3 others. That's important. I think what really, really resonated today for me was listening to President Trump this morning, and he got into this area about energy and oil. We are now exporting liquefied natural gas to Poland for the first time ever, and it really struck me I was happened to be on Fox and Friends, and it really struck me at that moment that one of the first things he did, he rolled back energy regulation, and that gave us so much power to do so many things. You look at Poland, they're at the mercy of Russia. Poland imports a lot of their gas and energy from Russia, as does Germany, as do parts of Eastern Europe, who are just at their mercy. By pulling us off oil dependence of OPEC and other countries, Canada, we're becoming a much more independent and strong country.
Yeah, of course. Not everybody loves that, though. Just like a lot of the protests that we saw today, those were anti-capitalist protesters specifically, because usually capitalists aren't protesting so much as we are contributing to society a little too much.
Were they anarchist rioters, don't you think?
Of course. If you're throwing flames, then you're not a protester, you're a criminal. I think anybody would say that.
Well,
not everybody.
Not everybody.
No, unfortunately. I think, yeah, not everybody.
Every rational person.
I don't think that the pro-flame throwing is a very big segment of the population.
Anytime you see the masks,
not the pro-flame throwing lobby.
Anytime the scarves go over the face from here down, you know you're dealing with professionals and anarchists and violent protests.
And I never understand that anyway, Steve, because if I'm a protester, and I've protested during my earlier days back in college, I did so proudly, and I wanted to be seen and known, and that anonymity to me always really undermined.
You weren't going to toss bottles and start fires,
I'm a lady,
so they don't want anybody knowing who they are.
But you can throw a football, so I assume you can throw a Molotov cocktail as well.
Actually, my football, you know, you ever seen me on Hannity? It looks bad. I'm a bad football thrower. You don't want to see that, Eric.
Right. Well, during his Warsaw address, President Trump directed some pointed criticism at Russia.
We urge Russia to cease its destabilizing activities in Ukraine and elsewhere, and its support for hostile regimes, including Syria and Iran, and to instead join the community of responsible nations in our fight against common enemies and in defense of civilization itself.
Do you think this, Eric, this is going to change things for tomorrow? Do you think this is a preview of tomorrow, or no?
I think I'm going to go back to this. I think Steve mentioned something. I'm going to go back to the original comment about the energy market. Russia is on its heels right now. Russia was built recently, over the last 15 or 20 years, on $60, $70, $80 barrels of oil. Now they got $40 barrels of oil. They are an oil economy, and they're hurting badly. So Putin can meet Trump and act like he's on an equal playing field with Trump, but he's not. The American economy is off to the races, and Russia is kind of suffering.
I don't know. What would you want to weigh in at all?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think that overall, if we just look at this from a psychology standpoint, it's never about what you have done, it's about what you're willing to do. And I think the thing about Putin is that we all know, no matter if he's in a good position or he's in a bad position, he's willing to do harm. And that's the same, you know, with North Korea. When you're dealing with people like that, it's less rational.
You're talking about political will, and I think that is so important, and the president basically used those words. And that's the thing. We've had a lot of power when it comes to North Korea and other places. I don't know that we've exercised the political will in the way that we could have, and I think that window, Eric, and you and I were talking about this yesterday, it's getting smaller and smaller and smaller really each passing day, and I think at some point we've got to conjure up that political will to be forceful in a way that I don't know that we have been.
You have to hope that the bilaterals with, especially China and Russia, are focused around surrounding North Korea. I mean, we haven't really talked about it. We're going to get to it in the next block, but that's what they really need to hone down with it. We have a common problem globally with North Korea. Maybe China doesn't see it that way, but they certainly should.
I think that they do. I think that everybody does, but again, we'll get a little bit into that in the next block. All right, also in Warsaw today, President Trump addressed the hard line he's taken on NATO.
To those who would criticize our tough stance, I would point out that the United States has demonstrated, not merely with words, but with its actions, that we stand firmly behind Article 5, the mutual defense commitment.
Trump's backing of Article 5 is sure to give European leaders a sign of relief going into this G20 summit. Again, as I alluded to earlier, he never said that he didn't back it. He was just kind of saying, hey, guys, do you back it? Because you're supposed to be doing this and this and this, and you're not. You're
100% correct. As Eric pointed out, it was all about the money. It was all about the proper contribution. And, of course, the media went and distorted it and said, well, you know, he's been vague, he's been this, but he has said it over and over again and never said the opposite, which is very important. Today, all speculation, all the conjecture has to end because there he said it, but they're still going to find doubt.
He never said that as a president. As a candidate, he said perhaps it was obsolete, but again, that was candidate
I actually
Trump.
think it is obsolete. I mean, this is something I'm going to push back on what Trump is doing here. We allowed Montenegro into NATO. Montenegro's full economy, the full GDP of Montenegro is $10 billion. So if they put up 2% of their $10 billion, it's like $200 million. Right. It's like a busy day on the seas for the United States military. Nothing. Airball, but we have to defend them, and they're in southeastern Europe. They're in a fairly unstable part of the world. I mean, this is a big NATO commitment, so they all, or the other 27, should be putting
like I've always said, it's supposed to be an alliance, not a daycare center, and you're supposed to give something in order to get something.
We took on another toddler, though.
Absolutely.
And what about Turkey? I mean, if Turkey gets into a rift with Israel, then now by what Trump just said, we're bound to defend Turkey against Israel. I mean, it gets a little dangerous.
Well, and I think that's when people think about Trump being a disruptor in chief, right? That's, I think, one of the places that a lot of people are, or should be, in my opinion, more willing to give him a lot more slack, right? Because if we wanted things to be done the way they've been done, just for the sake of doing them that way, I think the country could have gone in another direction, politically speaking. I think that's a space where Trump should really flex, and it's not about, you know, breaking commitments, but it's also about making sure that people hold themselves accountable to terms that we, mutually agreed upon when going into the NATO agreement.
Right.
So let me expand on that. So here, Trump, the Article 5, if what that means is if any one member of NATO is attacked, the full membership has to get behind that person, that country attacked. So Article 5 says that we have to defend all 27 of these countries. Do we do that even when 22 of the 27 aren't making their commitment?
Eric, I don't think so, and I know that's going to shock some people. I don't think so because, again, you've breached, it's like a contract, right? If I breach a term, Why do I get...
They're not the
paying your
victims in
That's
this
what I'm
situation.
saying. That's right. You breach your term. Why do you get to be rendering of the benefit of that when you've not shown up for what you said you were going to do?
But he just backed it. He just said
I know,
we got
and
Article
I think that was
5.
premature, actually. That's my take.
Yeah, and I think people forget that NATO, they showed up in Afghanistan, but not in Iraq. That's a big, dang deal, right? And so what you're saying is you're part of this agreement, and smoke and mirrors, and on paper it all looks great, but the reality is it doesn't have any teeth. If people don't show up in Iraq when we need them, we're still there fighting.
Especially when you look at where the problems are. If you look at Belgium spending less than 1%, and we're supposed to go to there with all these problems all centered there. Come on, man. You got to say something when it reaches that point.
I mean, I don't disagree with what everybody has said, but I don't see how, if someone is attacked, we're going to take out the balance sheet and say, let's see, they only gave 1.5%. Sorry, you're on your
Which
own.
is why you let them
Steve,
know now.
You have car insurance for a reason. You keep up. You pay your car insurance
You
so
don't pay
that
your
the
premium,
day
yeah.
you get into a car
But
accident...
Allstate just said you're covered.
Yeah, Steve, you're right,
Right.
though. They know we will show up.
They know we will show up.
Trump,
They know we will
Trump.
show up, which is why it's even crazier that people are so upset that he's saying, hey,
So
I'm
why
not so
pay?
happy about you doing not your
No,
fair
no,
share.
I'm with- I'm with-
everything in there.
I'm with you all.
Anyone
Yeah.
pay,
But-
Steve.
yeah.
Why would anyone pay if you're the other? How's this? If you're Poland, why would you pay your 2%? Now, why not go back to,
And skate
I don't
like
know,
everybody
1%?
else.
I agree with all of you. Everybody should pay. I agree with Donald Trump, have from the beginning. But I think if push comes to shove, they're not going to say sorry. I don't think they will.
No, I don't
I
think so
agree with
either.
you. We
All
have a
right.
bigger